folks, welcome back to My Kitten Reads. I'm Eleanor and this is my April wrap-up. In good news, I read 17 things in April. In slightly more predictable news, most of them were Jane Austen Pride and Prejudice variation novels. At least this time round, it wasn't just rereads, I actually read new stuff as well. So, but yeah, it was a bit of a month of comfort reading with some gym and readathon reading tacked on the end. But I did read 17 things. So I started the month actually with finishing rereading Hither Page by Cat Sebastian. This is a male queer romance novel / murder mystery set just after World War II in England. It's kind of cozy and it's like a spy and a country doctor who both end up in the same town after someone's been killed. And yeah, kind of dancing around each other and their different war experiences. But it's sweet and queer and a lot of fun. And I'm hoping there's going to be more books in this series at some stage. Then I picked up one of the Sydney Salyer Jane Austen variations I hadn't read yet, which was Consequence and Consequences. In this one, Darcy has apologised a couple of days after his initial insult at the assembly, and so Lizzie and his relationship is better, but as he leaves Netherfield, he comes across her and says, I hope I haven't ignited your expectations because you're below me in society. Lizzie politely agrees with him, although she's very, very offended, and she also knows that in fact just that very morning her father's great-great-uncle has passed away and her father will now be the Duke of Barrington. Yes, imagine Darcy's surprise and imagine Lizzie's anger when apparently as the daughter of a duke, she's worthy of him. Shenanigans ensue. Then I finished Uncanny issue 34 and I didn't make any notes at the time about what was in that one. So I can't remember any off the top of my head that I really, really enjoyed. There probably was some, but I've been read a lot of Uncanny magazine recently. Thankfully, I've recently started using Storygraph as well as Goodreads, and I can make personal, private journal entries on that. And so with my Uncanny magazines, I'm actually, every time I update it, I'm making a little entry about what stories or essays or whatever I liked. So hopefully that will improve my reviews of Uncanny magazine. Then I reread A Summer in Brighton by Jan Rowland and Layla I, which I hadn't read in a while. And this is one in which Lizzie is the one that makes friends with Mrs. Forster and therefore goes to Brighton. Shenanigans ensue. I also read The Unexpected Heiress by Florence Gold, in which Lizzie is unexpectedly not Mr. and Mrs. Bennet's daughter, but their niece, and her father was the second son of a marquess, and there's an inheritance, which is why she gets told the truth. Then I read Uncanny issue 35. I do have notes on this. I really enjoyed The Inaccessibility of Heaven by Aliette de Bollard, which is a fallen angel murder mystery story and is a Hugo nominated story. I really enjoyed The Ruby of the Summer King, which is I didn't write down who it was by, but it's a sort of fae court romance. The Summer King is sort of distantly in love with the Winter Queen and is but you know, summer and winter shall never meet, and there are consequences when he tries to gain her attention. Then when there were some really interesting essays in that one as well, in particular P. Jelly Clark's essay about Watchmen and Black Utopias. And there was an essay by Hilary Monaghan about the representation of the Romani people in fiction, which I found really, really interesting. So Uncanny issue 35 was really good. I really quite liked a lot of that. Then I went to another Sydney Salyer one that I hadn't read before, which was Don't Flatter Yourself Revisited. So this is essentially, it starts at the same point as Don't Flatter Yourself, except this time Lizzie's publicly known as the daughter of the Earl and how that changes her interactions with Mr. Darcy in the story. Then I read Guarding and Protecting by Deborah Ann Cower, which is a slightly supernatural Jane Austen variation in which both Darcy and Elizabeth have ghostly counsellors who start talking to them as young people well before they meet, and therefore guide them through life, and that changes how they interact with everybody everyone around them. I read A Year Without a Summer by Martin Honeycutt, which is a variation in which it's very domestically minded, in that they have a really, really cold winter, and so there's a lot in it about how at Longbourn they cope, and Mr. Darcy ends up corresponding with Mr. Bennet about sort of land management and all that kind of thing, and Lizzie is all interested in that, so that's interesting. Lost Souls by Martin Honeycutt, still on the Jane Austen variations. This one is one where, unfortunately, Darcy does not prevent Georgiana eloping with Wickham. Therefore, there's a massive scandal. His noble titled relatives on the Fitzwilliam family want him to throw her off. He's worried about her. She ends up dying, and he ends up coming to visit Bingley in disguise as Bingley's new secretary in order to mourn properly. And he and Lizzie have various interactions, as usual. Longbourn Inheritance, also another new one for me, by Laraba Kendig. And in this one, I think this is the one, I've read a lot, so they're a bit confused in my head, where the inheritance, the entail ends up being, that's right, I think this one is the one where there was Lydia had a twin brother, but he passes away as a young man before he becomes of age. And so they're in mourning, the sisters are in mourning, that affects the sisters all differently. But it also, when Mr. Collins comes to visit, he gets thrown by a horse and killed, and that changes the inheritance of Longbourn. And there's a lot in this one about addiction because of the way Mr. Bennet becomes an alcoholic after his son's death and how he has to try and get through that. It's another interesting take where something's different to start with. Then I read Elizabeth Bennet Heiress. You're probably seeing a theme. There's a whole lot of Elizabeth as an heiress ones that I was going through. So, by Don H. Miller. So in this case, Elizabeth ends up inheriting, I think, Longbourn. It's been a while. This one's not very clear in my brain. So, but that was another one. Then I reread The Banished Uncle by Laraba Kendig, in which Mrs. Bennet's other brother arrives back from India, where he's been making his fortune because his stepson has inherited a title. And that, again, changes the way that the Bennets interact with Darcy. So that was all digital. So all of those books were digital. Most of them were Jane Austen variations, except for the Uncannies and Hither Page. Then I actually finally read some physical books, in that I did Dewey's 24-hour readathon, and so I read Exit Strategy by Martha Wells, which is the fourth book in the Murderbot Diaries. It's the fourth novella. So this is a story about Murderbot, who is a security bot who hacked their own code, and they really kind of just want to watch their shows and read their books, but they keep sort of getting into trouble. And in this one, they have discovered that the person who freed them in the first book has now been kidnapped by the corporation who caused all the trouble in the first book and who Murderbot has been investigating. And so Murderbot goes back to try and rescue their friend. That was fun. I love Murderbot, and this is one where the character is agender. You know, because robots don't have to be agender, but this one, it does not use gendered pronouns, which is always fun. So I really enjoyed Exit Strategy, so I will hopefully be picking up the novel that comes next soon. But yes, that was the fourth Murderbot Diaries novella. Then I read two things that exist in one volume. So Imaginary Numbers by Shona Maguire is last year's published encrypted novel. This is about Sarah, who is the cuckoo, who has been adopted into the family. And now she's finally recovered as well as she can from her injury from the first couple of novels. And she's finally going to visit her family again. And then all these other cuckoos turn up and they want her for something. So yeah, Cuckoo versus Price, Human versus Cryptid. Yeah, so this has a little bit of a cliffhanger, really. They do something, they end up somewhere interesting. So yeah, this is Sarah's story. Sarah Zellweger's story. So that was fun. And inside the back of this, there is a novella which I also read, which is called Follow the Lady. And that one was set after the last bunch of books when Antimony and her friends are on the way home, and then they stop by the old family homestead and meet Grandma, the dimension traveling Grandma, before they head home. So that was fun as well. So always love me my encrypted novels and novellas. And I finally finished Wintersmith by Terry Pratchett, which is the third Tiffany Aching novel. In this one, Tiffany accidentally steps into the dance and dances with the King of Winter, and he becomes a little bit obsessed with her, and that's a problem. So, yeah, then she has to figure out, all right, how do I cope with this, particularly as my current mentor is about to die. So there's all sorts of shenanigans regarding witches and how they take hold of who gets to inherit the witch's cottage and all that kind of stuff. And she ends up going to stay with Nanny Ogg, which is hilarious. I love it when Nanny Ogg turns up. So, and of course there is Granny Weatherwax keeping an eye on everybody. So that was the last thing I finished in April. So yes, I read a lot. Much of it was trashy. Much of it did not meet my goals. I'm pretty sure the only things that were going towards my goals for the year were the two what I would call queer books, which is Heather Page and Exit Strategy. I suppose Wintersmith counts to my usual, and Imaginary Numbers count to my usual ticking off series that I am in the midst of. Although I don't think that's a specific goal this year, I can't remember. But yes, I read a lot. I read a lot of trash. I also probably also read a whole bunch more Jane Austen rereads, but there's stuff that I had already reread this year, so they don't count. I was just my head was just, I needed comfort. So comfort reading, it's a thing. So I really do need to try and get back into my goals for reading. But, yes. Things. I haven't actually read much yet I haven't really finished much yet this month, so we'll see how I go. But at least I'm ahead on my overall goal for the year, so yay! That is my April wrap-up. If you've read any of those books and want to talk about them, chat in the comments below. Always happy to talk about books. Like, subscribe, and I will see you all again really soon. Bye!